We are back, and I'm so happy to be joined by Brendan James, host of the Blowback Podcast, which I cannot recommend more highly. It's phenomenal. All of the seasons are wonderful listens, and I can't wait to see what you guys have in store next. Brendan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Good to be back.
Great to see you. Let's just start right here. The Casual Fridays, we're recapping this week in news, and it feels like maybe the biggest story of the week, at least domestically, is really hitting a fever pitch today. This CDC purge here. Trump has been really escalating his firing of these government officials. I mean, this was just this month. He fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics in response to unemployment data that was not good for him. He then has tried to, earlier this week, remove the Federal Reserve governor. And now he is gutting the CDC senior leadership over basically vaccine policy. So this the head of the CDC resigned because basically they were pushing her out. And now the rumored replacement is this guy, Jim O'Neill. So Jim O'Neill was previously the CEO of Peter Thiel's Thiel Foundation. He was the managing director for Peter Thiel's Clarium Capital. He was a part of the Peter Thiel Fellowship and co-founder. And his Twitter account is still public. So we get these wonderfully just intellectual thoughts like this about science and medicine. He's tweeted this in November 2021. Remember, the name COVID was chosen to conceal the origin of the virus. This name makes it harder to study and probably slowed the response. What is your theory on that? Is it too many letters for him? Or
Does he? Well, the thing he's quoting says SARS in it. Does he want it to call, like, because it's...
Oh, he's quoting himself. Yes.
Yeah.
Lynn
He's saying COVID and SARS were both coded to hide the Chinese origin.
Understood. So it should have just been China virus. This is
my thing with this whole sort of new, influx of guys like this is they've won already. Like, Trump calls it the China virus pretty often. Right. He calls it that already, but they won't take a win. They have to keep complaining or set up this idea that there is still, I don't know, some kind of shadow government that's preventing them from getting everything that they want. So we need to pretend it's not already called the China virus by the president, but he already does that. I mean,
it's the same people that wouldn't let Obama say radical Islamic terror.
Yeah, right.
Yes.
And speaking of that person, she is now the director of national intelligence. Tulsi Gabbard was the Democrat that was really holding Obama accountable on not saying it.
Yeah, you have to say China virus now. I mean, I don't know a lot about this guy. Is there a well of stuff coming up about him now that like people are looking
for W?
Yeah, well, the Guardian has a good write-up here. Monterez, this is the woman who was fired, who was confirmed by the Senate as CDC director less than a month ago, was viewed by agency staff and outside experts as someone who could potentially help moderate Kennedy's anti-vaccine agenda. O'Neill, unlike Monterez, has no training in medicine or infectious disease science. He's a former speechwriter for the health department during the Bush years, who went on to work for the tech investor and conservative mega donor Peter Thiel. During the COVID pandemic, O'Neill voiced public support for unproven treatments that were not supported by scientific evidence, including ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, as well as vitamin D as a supposed prophylaxis, which, take vitamin D, take supplements, not going to help you not get COVID.
Well, that's just what you say. He's the new authority on this. So, I mean, I don't know who to believe, but yeah, I don't know. Is it like this has been interesting too, seeing the rise of this sort of woo-woo right wing, and obviously RFK Jr. is the embodiment of all of that. I haven't been I haven't really been. That's the thing that almost is the most dystopian to me of the whole thing right now. I mean, as far as domestic politics is concerned, because there is this sort of suicide drive that seems to be at play where they want to get rid of medicine. I mean, like proper medicine. And even the most, I mean, the W. Bush administration, they had like pandemic plans set in place. I think there was an article about that in the past few years of like, it was a fairly robust plan. There were real attempts, however, ideologically, warped things were in the Bush administration, or even Trump 1. There was this idea that the government is responsible for making sure you don't die of a disease. And that being out the window is to me what has felt the most transformative, because there's always been the, Hoover Institution guys and wanting to slash, public services and war and go to war and stuff. But this is the most sort of freakish new outgrowth that I've, at least to me. So well, I don't know anything about this guy, but he's obviously seems to be in line with that. If he's telling you to take, like a B1 if you want to prevent yourself from getting the next from bird flu or whatever.
I mean, he's literally a biotech investor. I mean, I feel like that's the new thing now with the right. Is like we have the Heritage Foundation stuff and Project 2025, which seem to be pretty accurate prediction of their agenda. And that still is going to exist even after Trump's gone. And I don't know, it's interesting to see how that is just going to like combine like a cyborg with this Silicon Valley psycho shit.
Yeah, that's a great point. And there's so much money on that side of things, like the tech biology almost world, where these cranks are calling the shots. And you have, I mean, RFK's independent campaign bid was subsidized by his supposed vice presidential pick, who was the ex-wife of a former Google executive who had
Sergey Brin, yeah.
What'd you say?
Sergey Brin,
right, who had a crap ton of money, and she was like, that was the big, impetus behind his ability to really even like bankroll this kind of thing. And so there's so much. I would argue that it's the anti-intellectualism and anti-peer review element that is most enticing to the capitalists that are behind this, because take the Theranos lady, for example. She's notorious, but her story is not unique. These are like these tech people that want to get into the field of, say, biomedicine or health, that don't want like the cumbersome government regulations that would tell you whether or not this product is, say, effective or good, to get in the way of them making a bunch of money. And RFK is a great vehicle for that, because he's a crank enough to like truly believe, I think, what he says, but it fits very nicely with a libertarian agenda about healthcare.
Yeah, I think I suppose that's the clear, if you like, ideological link there is all of these, as you say, crank or holistic stuff that has come out of the RFK Jr. wing of the Trump coalition, is stuff that they don't want to be regulated, and they don't want to be gummed up by scientists or government bureaucrats determining whether it's good or bad for you. And that's part and parcel of everything else that they want to reorganize now. So I guess that is the explanation for it. I'm curious how quickly that will be repaired, on the other side of this, because that's always what I think is there, whether it's institutions of, like USAID or all the stuff that Doge took apart. I keep thinking, if there is a Democratic administration after this, how easy will it be for them, and how much will they expend the effort to repair all that? And I wonder with the damage being done to HHS as well, how much this can be reversed and how quickly.
And I would say that the popular support behind it, where like you look at RFK, and much to my chagrin, he's maybe the best polling figure in the administration at this moment. And it's because he at least talks about an issue that people are anxious about. I mean, I've long maintained that his appeal is that he exploits the anxiety people have about their healthcare, and gives them these like bespoke market-based solutions of buy this supplement, do this within your personal control, that makes them feel empowered when they really aren't. And let's pull up 8 here. This was from earlier this week. This is RFK talking about what he sees at the airport. And like, I mean, I think this clip more than many underscores how this guy views disease or views abnormalities or views even obesity or Down syndrome or autism. Like, remember he said that stuff about how people with autism like can't vote or
they'll never pay taxes.
It's not based in anything except, in my view, like a pretty scary eugenicist disgust for folks. Listen to how he talks about kids he sees in the airport.
And I know what a healthy child is supposed to look like. I'm looking at kids as I walk through the airports today.
What's a healthy man supposed to sound like?
I was about to say, go on.
No, I mean, talk about glass houses. Again, this is the talking catcher's mitt who sounds like his voice is in a blender, speaking about health for everybody.
And I know what a healthy child is supposed to look like. I'm looking at kids as I walk through the airports today, as I walk down the street, and I see these kids that are just overburdened with mitochondrial challenges, with inflammation. You can tell from their faces, from their body movements, and from their lack of social connection. And I know that that's not how our children are supposed to look. And I know what
they should look like me.
Those mitochondrial challenges and social like that's just do you know
how
what
can you
he's
observe
getting?
that in the airport? The kids are both inflamed and don't have friends, and RFK can tell you that based on what?
Who has friends at the airport?
Yeah.
From looking at them all from every child, passing through the gate, he is just studying them up and down, I guess. I mean, he says stuff like this a lot, doesn't he? Where he's like, it's always like, I see kids now, and just by looking at them, I know that, I don't know, that they've taken the vaccine or whatever. But it's, yeah, I mean, I saw this go around. This is like the Laura Loomer thing where she was saying, we're paying too much for foreigners, particularly Palestinians, to come over here and get surgeries. And my buddy Felix Biederman, raised the question, should she really be the one deciding how many surgeries is appropriate? Same with RFK Jr. It's just like, I can never believe this is the guy. And what you say about, he's the perfect sort of candidate for this, because he says there's a problem, and then the solution is a bunch of deregulation and hokum, but people do feel as though he is just talking about something apolitical, health. He's talking about something that both the Democrats and Republicans, they neither will admit there's a problem, and I don't know if he's really running policy. It seems like he is to a certain extent. But the idea of, we're going to talk about the Medicaid stuff, I guess, like that's just an old mission to bring all that crashing down. And he is this kind of, I think to a lot of people, just, apolitical kook that is just, I don't know if he's charismatic. He's certainly not.
I wouldn't say that.
He's not telegenic or audiogenic or whatever, but he's definitely, I think he strikes people, like you say, as someone who might be a little weird, but he's not talking in any kind of like politicized language. He just says, we need to make our kids better. And, everyone goes, well, I don't know in the vaccine, because frankly, I'm not a doctor. I just believe like all the sheeple that he's, wagging his finger at. I just believe the government authorities when they say we have a vaccine and you should take it. So as soon as you spark a little bit of doubt in that, drop big pharma in your speeches, every now and again, I think you've won people's trust just by default, because, everyone else seems like such a crook compared to the kook in the room at this point,
I think the plane comment is or airport comment is so revealing because that's the only time he's ever around normal people. Is when he has to fly. Like, and it reminded me of this Kenneth Copeland clip from Inside Edition where they asked him why he bought Tyler Perry's plane, and he says he needs to fly private because he can't get in a tube with a bunch of demons.
Yeah.
Do you ever use your private jets to go visit your vacation homes, for example?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Again, getting back to the comment, you said that you don't like to fly commercial because you don't want to get into a tube with a bunch of demons. Do you really believe that human beings are demons?
No, I do not. And don't you ever say I did. We wrestle not with flesh and blood.
Oof.
Yeah.
I mean that little eye thing he did was pretty demonic to me. I mean, I don't know.
That was I mean, at least there's some energy there. You know, RFK, every time I see him now, he's like one step closer, you know, to just melting down and his body's gonna shut down. Like I don't know. I'm ready to let her rip. Let's just see how it goes. The fact that bird flu has not like unleashed yet is still shocking to me. I don't know if that's just, I know we're not testing for it as much anymore.
Right.
So there's probably some level of like intentional or unintentional cover up of that. But yeah, this guy in charge during an outbreak of any kind is pretty terrifying.
Well, I think it's probably in many ways people behind the scenes that are still there, that are working probably way harder for the exact same pay, deeply understaffed, who are like trying their hardest to keep their, profession and the work of the agency together with duct tape and gum. And, we saw that a little bit in the wake of those horrible floods in Texas, where like the nationally they did get out some of the warnings in time, which a lot of people were speculating that may not be the case given the cuts. It was just good old Republican politics down in Texas that caused the deaths, the lack of infrastructure and
let's not pay $3,000 for a siren.
Right, that they were warned about in previous national disasters down there. But you mentioned the AI thing. I just want to touch on it really quickly, and then we'll get to Israel Palestine, because I headlined this yesterday, but I really think it deserves a little bit more attention. There was an article in the New York Times, again, that came out yesterday morning, speaking about how there's now this pilot program that the administration is using in 6 states that would use AI to determine whether or not certain programs will be covered by Medicare. Now, if this sounds familiar to people, you might have heard the story of one Luigi Mangione. I don't know if AI was a part of declining care for him or if it was just, the normal bureaucratic incentives of a health insurer. But this is what, they're trying to do this for basically a government program here, which is deeply concerning. I'll just read a little bit of this. The article opens kind of talking about this 74-year-old woman who is facing concerns that she's going to be getting these denials. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services plan to begin a pilot program that would involve a similar review process for traditional Medicare. And this is comparing it to private companies doing this. The federal insurance program for people 65 and older, as well as for many younger people with disabilities. The pilot would start in 6 states next year, including Oklahoma, where Miss Ayers lives. The federal government plans to hire private companies to use artificial intelligence to determine whether patients would be covered for some procedure, like certain spinal surgeries or steroid injections. Similar algorithms used by insurers have been the subject of several high-profile lawsuits, which have asserted that the technology allowed the companies to swiftly deny large batches of claims and cut patients off from care and rehabilitation facilities. The AI companies selected to oversee the program would have a strong financial incentive to deny claims. Medicare plans to pay them a share of the savings generated from rejections. The government said the AI screening tool would focus narrowly on about a dozen procedures, which it has determined to be costly and little to no benefit to patients. Well, I mean, if the Trump administration says there's little to no benefit to patients, I guess we should just believe them. This is horrifying. Medicare is immensely important.
Remember death panels?
This is a death panel. This is AI death panels. This is what they were talking about. Another freaking instance of goddamn conservative projection coming right back around. This is what they're trying to do.
There was a book a couple years back called Automating Inequality, I think it was called. The author was, I believe her name was Virginia Eubanks. And she, the book is basically about, mostly in social services and policing, the introduction of technology that, I don't know if it was AI or it was thought of as AI at the time, but essentially in the name of efficiency and a more sort of constructive and accurate system to either police or manage databases and allocate the resources for social work, that things got way worse in the cases that she observed in certain states that were tinkering around with this stuff. And that's what I was thinking of when I was reading the article that you just were reading from. I mean, it's obviously going to be declared in the name of a more efficient and speedier and therefore more effective set of procedures. But you have the profit motive at play, obviously, now inside of what is supposed to be a government, profit-free set of services and systems. But then you also have just what we now is almost a punchline of AI being this, wherever it's been, flourishing lately, it's a disaster. I mean, the idea that that'll be applied to people's assessment of whether they need spinal surgery or not is next level.
The financial incentive to deny care of like insurers just basically being through the use of technology inserted into the already completely threadbare social safety net that we have. It's dystopian. But Brendan, while we have you here, obviously, as I wax poetically about the Blowback Podcast, you have an intricate understanding of the depravity of our foreign policy and the establishment that goes along with it. And you did a wonderful season on the Iraq War, and one of the many villains of that war was one Tony Blair. Now, Tony Blair is reportedly working with Jared Kushner at Trump's direction. Kushner's back. Remember when he was telling a bunch of Harvard people about all the real estate possibilities in Gaza like over a year ago, and now Trump is saying the exact same thing? Curious. So apparently Kushner and Blair are working together on this Gaza rebuilding plan, and the meeting also included a senior Israeli official, because the only democracy in the Middle East, in heavy air quotes, wants to impose a government upon a people that they will have no say in, because democracy.
Yeah, I ever since that whole idea was floated, I mean, I'd love to see them try this. I don't know if it's just something they're saying. I mean, it's obviously a very Trump style line, that we're going to turn it into a beautiful, whatever, like seaside development. I can't imagine. I mean, we're going to introduce American troops to secure a joint Israeli-American redevelopment of Gaza. Doesn't seem likely to me. And if that happened, that would be like, I mean, he got a little bit of flack even from the right for striking Iran. I mean, I can't imagine anyone, at least from the perspective of public opinion or even his coalition, being okay with following through on the idea of committing American lives in Gaza. But Blair being attached is never a good sign. And
can you give people some background on his role in the Middle East?
Yeah, I mean, the Iraq War is probably the most significant place to start. He was the prime minister. It was sort of already the Clinton of the Labor Party in the 90s and then early 2000s. It was called New Labor, which was the idea that we need to get with the times and stop doing as much socialism or sort of Fabian British social democracy and start to privatize and start to deregulate and things that that was sort of matching up with what Clinton and the Democratic Party were doing here. But he's most infamous and became incredibly unpopular for becoming Bush's lapdog with Afghanistan and Iraq. And so some of the kookiest and most embarrassingly fake intelligence meant to justify the Iraq War actually came from British dossiers, including one that was claiming there were little green vials of deadly chemicals that was clearly lifted from a scene in the movie The Rock with Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery. That was overseen by Tony Blair, not to mention the actual commitment of British troops and the selling of the war in general and the management of the war. So he has the Iraq War on his record. He also sort of was a part of rehabilitating Muammar Gaddafi before we rehabilitated him when he was for a second there an ally in the war on terror. Blair did some consulting for Gaddafi, and Gaddafi ended up going on like British shows talking about his little green book or whatever. Obviously what came after Gaddafi in Libya was worse, but Blair's there for whatever largely evil and nefarious project or client in the Middle East. So it does not surprise me that, I mean, it kind of actually surprised me to hear his name, but it doesn't surprise me that he'd be involved in something like the American proposals for Gaza at this point.
How could it possibly be implemented? I mean, I'm not trying to downplay the horror of what they're proposing, but I mean, we're seeing real issues internally within Israel right now. We reported this yesterday, but like these poor reservists are exhausted from helping commit genocide, and they're like just not showing up. And there are talks about fatigue among the IDF, and there have been, I think, like suicides. And so internally in Israel, Netanyahu is going to have a problem trying to get these reservists to do the ground invasion of Gaza City, which he's been ramping up to for quite a while. Like, how can Israel sustain this level of barbarity on so many different fronts? Not just, of course, in Gaza. They're annexing the West Bank as we speak, and they're bombing Syria, and like they also underreported, it appears, the damage that Iran did to them when they struck Israel. We still don't know the extent of it, but it appears fairly significant. So like, there's got to be at least some, I mean, pushback within the region to this kind of thing, I would hope.
I mean, we're all sort of probably, operating off of the same, guesswork when it comes to Trump. I mean, whether it's you and me or the King of Jordan, I don't know if anyone takes it seriously or knows when we should start taking it seriously. It was last year that Trump talked about the, turning Gaza into a resort or whatever. And I remember at the time just thinking, like, again, I would love to see them try to do that, because it obviously sounds insane. Not only for its moral, implications, but just that the one part of Iraq, to talk about Iraq again, the one part of Iraq where you could have like McDonald's or whatever and walk around and, not worry about getting blown up was in the bubble that was the green zone.
You talked about this in Blowback. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And otherwise, and that's a much larger country, but in some sense, an even harder country to fight an insurgency. Hamas is fighting a pretty darn good insurgency against Israel right now. And the idea that anything in the near term could produce the conditions for, again, putting aside the just evil of the proposition, that could produce the conditions for what Kushner or Trump or I guess Blair would be aiming to do is ridiculous. I mean, people would get blown up every single day trying to build the Cracker Barrel or whatever. So that I don't see that happening. And I don't know what Blair brings to this other than the prestige of a former head of state, who, you know, maybe the Hicks in the administration thinks sounds smart because he's British. I don't know. But like, I just don't know what he has no particular prestige in the actual region among like, you know, populations or even leadership in the Middle East. So yeah, it would be very unlikely, I mean, to imagine any of this coming to fruition. What will continue, of course, is the war and the extermination campaign by Israel. And I think they're saying stuff like this just to almost convince probably their own audience, and then the audiences in America, that this will be over soon. Right. You know, I think that's why you start talking about Burger
Well, Trump
King
has been saying I want to wrap, he's obsessed with these imposing these self-imposed deadlines. He wants this done by the end of 2025. And what being done means is, could be as barbaric as basically entire extermination, which is like what we're looking at here. I mean, like, I'm a dog with a bone with this death toll thing, but it just drives me up a wall because I read the West, you know, we read a packet in the news in the morning, and the Western press is 63K. They, you know, like whatever. We've been lagging, and it's manufacturing consent for this genocide in ways that is perhaps the most pernicious piece of Israeli propaganda in the West right now, because it's across every outlet, because there's no verifiable information on the death toll, but like, use that figure because you don't have real figures. I get it. The press might do that. Immediate caveat needs to be, there have been analyses by Lancet and other showing that it's likely hundreds of thousands. Part of why there isn't enough urgency in the public, and I'm not trying to say there would be a revolution here, but is because we don't know the truth. It's hundreds of thousands dead and more are dying.
I am a stickler about the death toll stuff as well. You know, I do wonder if 63,000 doesn't upset or you know, explode your conscience, whether 163,000 would. Right. And we do know that it's an unpopular policy to support Israel now among Democrats and independents. I think it's obviously a minority within Republicans, but across the board, it's unpopular. Does that matter? Probably not. I mean, as far as affecting policy, probably not. The Iran strikes were unpopular. They did them anyway. But yeah, I think you're right about the crack up that's happening, because it's been 2 years now. And that to me is why, especially someone like Trump would start to say, don't worry, we're wrapping it up soon. That phrase, even wrap it up, you know, like the way to wrap it up. If he had the political or, you know, whatever type of courage, he would wrap it up by cutting Israel off completely. And then they would, you know, probably wither on the vine for a little bit until they had to really decide they didn't have the resources anymore to continue the extermination. But he doesn't want to do that. Or rather feels like he politically can't do that. And I'm sure he would get a wallop if he did, just like any Democratic president would. So he has to just keep asking pretty please to Netanyahu and say things like, oh, don't worry, it's only going to be another month or two, and then we'll have, you know, a flowering of Western style, you know, like a new Paris. So you think, you know, it'll take like decades. It'll take decades to even clear the rubble from Gaza, let alone this idea of like Sim City style, you know, like reskinning the map to make it look shiny and full of Western restaurants. So to me, it's a sign of desperation. And I think the Iran strikes were another sign of desperation, because they really, I think they realized that this is not really going to end well for Israel any more than it's obviously not that Israel is the victim, but it's not going to end well. It's a kind of death drive at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they're creating in this frenzy facts on the ground, which is an Israeli phrase, to try to cement greater Israel. I mean, one, by completely destroying the Gaza Strip and either ethnically cleansing or outright just killing basically all of the Palestinians there. And then the West Bank actions are increasingly deadly, violent, escalating, the approval of this E1 settlement plan we've been covering on the show, and trying to create facts on the ground to further foreclose the possibility of a Palestinian state, although obviously, Brendan, you know that the two-state solution is fictional and a stalling tactic, but even just like the diplomatic significance of a Palestinian state being recognized, they are sprinting to ensure that that's not possible. And I am optimistic when you say things like they're worried and it's desperate, but I also am not naive about what just sheer power and violence can achieve in a short period of time.
Absolutely. Same goes for America as well. I mean, I think we're living through the age of if there was decline before, free fall at this point, and it's you can be optimistic about certain aspects of that, but these types of states, whether it's a sort of lunatic ethnocracy like Israel or a dying empire like America, they don't go down without a fight. So then, of course, the concern is maybe they'll just let her rip. And I think that is basically like Israel would have had a greater chance at greater Israel if they had played this slowly and piecemeal over the next 50 years. I mean, they've already achieved half of greater Israel, in as you say, with the facts on the ground. But instead, I think it's gotten to its terminus of like any kind of logical or strategic ethnic cleansing, and after October 7th, they just said, we can do whatever we want, not unlike what happened after 9/11 in America. And we saw how that turned out. We reversed whatever leverage we had in those countries through a series of ironic and or blood-stained reversals. So I mean, it does seem desperate, but that, as you point out, doesn't mean it's going to get any better anytime soon. They'll just grind on.
Lastly, Brendan, I do think it's interesting to examine how the Democrats are responding to this. Like the Torres interview is not a good look for him, and he comes off incredibly callous and sociopathic. Not hard for him to do. But we just headlined this story that this moderate Democrat in North Carolina is swearing off now and announcing pretty early on, in her race, probably to foreclose the idea of a primary challenger, I would imagine. I don't know the district that well, that she won't take AIPAC money. And you have like this exciting candidate that we've interviewed up in Maine, Graham Plattner, who is like putting no AIPAC basically to the forefront of his race. Like, and even a guy like Charlemagne the God, who's just kind of like an independent vibe guy on TV or on the radio, calling Jeffrey's AIPAC Shakur. The fact that AIPAC is becoming a pejorative, and it's not just Democrats. Like Marjorie Taylor Greene says what she says because she's one of the top three representatives / senators that take the most percentage of money from small dollar donations. Like, not saying she's not an anti-Semite, but her, Bernie, and AOC are the top three, and she's the only Republican calling out AIPAC. It's becoming a pejorative, and that, at the very least, domestically here in the U.S. is an improvement. Just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you guys talked about the Torres thing. It is a good, Adam's a buddy. I thought it was an interesting interview on both sides of that set. But Torres being this, just retreating into that like a gator, sunbathing, just he couldn't, like he knew he couldn't blow up, and I'm sure he was thinking of like whatever staffer booked him on this and was imagining traps from the movie Saw to apply to them later, for in the moment that we realized this wasn't going to make him look hip and cool. But that lizard-like stance, I think, is incredibly alienating, and more people. I remember AIPAC was already becoming a pejorative because it was so linked with Republicans. over the past 4 or 5 years at this point. Trump embracing Miriam Adelson, and just like I think a lot of Democrats, even if they quietly kept taking AIPAC money, they didn't mind accepting that it was now a Republican coded lobby for many people. But the extermination campaign in Gaza definitely, I think, has given certainly younger politicians an impetus to say, I never want to have to deal with this. Why would, okay, I'll take some flack for maybe being too sympathetic to the Palestinians. Maybe they'll call it genocide. Maybe they won't. That whole rhetorical war will probably be with us for a little while longer. But they have no reason to, if they're smart, to think, yeah, in 5 years, I don't want to have to be tarred with the fact that I took AIPAC money. And it's a non-starter, I think, if you're smart. Then you have people like Slotkin, who are, trying to in real time, transmogrify.
Retrofit, right.
Exactly. And that's probably going to be unsuccessful. But yeah, it's good that it's become a pejorative. I hope it spreads to other forms of how this policy sustains itself, and the just the general support for Israel, whether it's a lobby or whether it's our public figures, whether they take AIPAC money or not. It should probably soon become a stain on your record to have said anything supportive of this. I know that leading Democrat, I can't remember her name at the moment, you probably covered it, she said genocide and then she took it back.
Yeah, Catherine Clark. She said it to her constituents and then ran to like a Zionist publication and backtracked it. Yeah.
So you can see it happening in real time. The younger upstarts know, let's just have a clean slate. And the ones who are already, caught in this web at the top are trying to wriggle out of this in real time. So that in and of itself is a good sign. Yeah.
Not complete optimism in our conversation here, but we can leave it on that note. Brendan James, really appreciate you coming on, and everybody, as I keep saying, check out Blowback. Anything else you're working on that we should mention?
Well, I'm working with my buddy Felix I mentioned earlier. I am working on a mini-series with him, but it's about Metal Gear Solid, so I don't know how many Majority Report listeners would care about that, but we are putting it out this week.
We've got a bunch of nerds in the audience. They might be into it.
I would never call them nerds. That those aren't my words.
Well, I have to discipline them in some way.
I do the same with our listeners. But no, Blowback Season 6 is coming out September 20th. And it will be about the civil war in Angola, the Cold War showdown in Africa. We've never done a season about Africa before. It's incredibly rich vein and a fascinating story. So if you like Blowback already, please check your podcast feeds come September 20th. But if you would like a hopefully entertaining and compelling show about largely Cold War history and American shenanigans all over the world, check out Blowback, wherever you get your podcasts.
All right. Alex Hidell says, I will be listening, sir. So we already have one listener on board. Thanks so much, Brendan.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate you coming on.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.